Are you ready for BRICS to transition away from the dollar and the SWIFT system? Do you know how this is going to impact global commerce and how you can take advantage of it? Well, stick around and find out. So we've got the BRICS nations, that is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, to drive the Belt and Road Initiative for China and the trade that is happening there, that is currently moving away from what currently moves all the money on the planet for international commerce, and that is SWIFT. SWIFT is the Society of Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunications, and it's basically a standardization of a messaging system that allows financial institutions to be interoperable and transact with one another. China and those other countries that I mentioned that are involved with BRICS, they are using the CIP system, which is the cross-border interbank payment system, which transacts in the renminbi, or the digital renminbi, which has been launched by China. And all of these countries, they sit on the board of the G20, which would also involve the G7, which are the largest countries in the world by GDP. U.S. obviously sits there, along with the broader EU, and Japan, and a few others are involved in those groups as well. And they all pretty much have a say-so in how global commerce transacts and what the path is going to look like moving forward because of some of the interactions that have happened over the last few years. Be careful about what I say, but there's a certain country that is in conflict with another one, and the U.S. has imposed sanctions on that country. So because of that, actually Switzerland has always been a neutral body in this, and they were no longer a neutral body when this transaction took place. And now the rest of the world is uncomfortable, which they have been for a long time, but showing their discomfort with the U.S. remaining in power as the global reserve currency with the dollar, and them basically, leveraging the SWIFT system, and it being able to impact people at a global scale for their ability to transact with other countries. And so as a consequence of this, they are migrating away from the unilateral system that the U.S. controls and has abused at times in order to basically get the rest of the world to do what they want. And, I think these countries understand that if any one of themselves were to be the main superpower that sat in that position, they're probably going to do things similar to the U.S. They're going to orchestrate things to make sure that their incentives and interests are, better suited for their country than other ones. And so I think that they're looking for an agnostic solution. They would rather nobody have the power than everybody have one person have absolute power. So they're going to migrate to a trustless system that levels the playing field. I'm sure you've heard a lot of people say a level playing field if you've been watching the news over the last few years, but that's where they're headed. So how are they going to get there? What are they going to implement? And what are the other people that are involved with this? So you've got AIIB, which is the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, similar to the IMF, which is the International Monetary Fund. They are kind of like the lender of last resort, and they have the vested interest of the BRICS nations. The International Monetary Fund is mainly dealing with the G7. They have a, supranational currency that they would like to sit in the position to be able to transact similarly to AIIB. We'll see who ends up winning out and what organization, kind of heads up, or if it's multiple that have a basket of currencies that, are interoperable and exchangeable as a lender of last resort. I think it would be ideal if you had choices for a lender of last resort, but I digress. So they have some pretty vested interest. AIIB does in China's Belt and Road Initiative for bolstering that trade route and integrating that with the broader EU. Really, the only country that's not on that trade route is the U.S. And I think that's on purpose. But they're going to want to transact, again, segregating themselves from the U.S. Because of the things that have transpired over the last, the time period where the U.S. has been the reserve currency. But we're going to need to be interoperable with this too. And so we're going to need to find a solution for that. And I think we have it. So right now, there's a really siloed solutions that exist through payment channels where people have, Swift again has a messaging system, but the settlement layer, there's basically partnerships between banks. So let's say you wanted to send an international payment, just so that you understand how this actually works right now. I come here from Mexico. I want to send money back home to my family. They operate with some bank that's a nascent bank in Mexico. Okay. Small, local bank there in Mexico. I go to Western Union and I want to send that money back. The fees to get that money back to my family might be 10% or more by the time it gets back to them, because Western Union's going to have a relationship with a certain bank. They're going to send the money there. They're then going to take that money, take their fee. They've got a relationship with another bank. It's going to go there after a couple days. And then they've got a relationship finally with the bank that your family deals with, right? So now we've got all this friction, 4 different parties involved that are all going to take a fee. People end up going to other countries and working and earning an income, really to spend a whole month's worth or more of the income that they produced in that country just to pay the fees to send money back home, which seems ridiculous, but that is how things currently operate. And it's very inefficient. There's a lot of people that sit in the middle there and arbitrage that opportunity and have trusted payment channels that make fees off those transactions. So how can we move to a system where basically everybody's on a trusted network where you can settle things real time, the fees are super low, and the other problem with the latency and the fees associated in the current system is you could have a big change in currencies and their values between one another in the period of time that it takes to settle finally at that bank. So let's say, it's a 10 to 1 on the peso when I send money back home, but by the time it gets there, it's 11 to 1. Well, by the time they took out the fees, and now we've had a change in the exchange rate, my money, it could be 15 or 20% less that the family gets by the time the money gets back home. It's just really inefficient. You need to see something that settles real time, and that's what RippleNet and R3 both offer. And then the underlying settlement mechanism, irrespective of which one they choose, is also going to be the same. And that's really where you can take advantage of this transition. So if you're a U.S. citizen, we've lived high on the hog for a long time. I've been very blessed my whole life to live here in the U.S. And have had a lot of the benefits associated with having the global reserve currency. We've been able to export our inflation to the rest of the world and basically do what we wanted because we were the top dog. We have a service-based economy. We don't produce much. We've hollowed out our production, which we used to be the largest producer in the world when we became the global reserve currency. And since then, now we're the biggest, instead of being the largest creditor nation, we're the world's largest debtor nation. And I think that'll be okay. A lot of people are scared about that. But I think that solution's kind of baked in to where this is headed. So those are the people that are involved. This is what's going to take place. So people are pretty aware at this point that the U.S. dollar is going to be removed as the global reserve currency. There's a lot of speculation on what's going to sit as a global reserve currency, and I don't think it's going to be one nation. I think you're going to have a basket, like the IMF does, depending on the GDP of the country. There'll be multiple reserve currencies that people transact in, and you'll get to choose. We already see the Middle East doing this, and they're selling the oil. They're selling the oil to whatever country in their own currency. They're transacting with Russia in their currency. They're transacting with China in their currency outside the U.S. dollar. So the petrodollar is pretty much gone at this point as well. And I think you're going to need a neutral bridge. You're going to need something that settles these transactions real time. Instead of just trusted relationships where people are able to arbitrage that and rake people for fees. I think people are tired of that as well. There's just a better way to do it. So they're going to migrate to these blockchain solutions that allow for interoperability between siloed networks on a public network. And there's going to have to be an agnostic settlement mechanism that facilitates that people can trust. And I have a bias. If you watch this channel, you probably know that by now. I think that's going to be XRP. Again, RippleNet and R3, primary settlement mechanism that they use. And once there's enough liquidity in that to provide the liquidity necessary to settle all those transactions. I think that SWIFT will likely integrate that. It's just, how does that liquidity come into that network on the public mainnet? When and how, those are the things that are up in the air. But we see the writing on the wall that that's likely going to happen. So the last thing that I'll leave you with is HSBC has partnered with Medico, and they're supposed to roll out their solution for digital asset custody here in Q1. So as of today, it is March 10th, 2024. We have 21 days left here in Q1 of 2024. So my expectation is we will see, digital asset custody be rolled out by HSBC, which is the Hong Kong and Shanghai Bank Corporation. They're a British multinational investment bank and financial services holding company. I was just in Dubai. They have a pretty large presence there. Japan, China, they're all over a lot of the BRICS nations in the Middle East. So they're here in the U.S. as well. But with that partnership with Medico, who was acquired by Ripple last year, it seems to me that they're likely, potentially going to be transacting in CBDCs. I don't know why else they would be rolling out digital asset custody here in Q1. And the only country that's looking to do that anytime soon is Japan. They're already in the pilot phase of their CBDC. So that's kind of my expectation. Maybe we see a launch of a CBDC for a G7 country, primarily Japan, here in Q1. Maybe the EU as well. They're pretty progressive when it comes to that. So we'll see, how much longer the US dollar really has. But if HSBC were to, start that custody capability and transacting in CBDCs to be able to settle international payments, the current SWIFT infrastructure cannot provide liquidity to that and settle those transactions. And I think that's when we'll actually start to see the shift to this new global monetary system that a lot of people anticipate is coming. So hopefully this has been valuable for you. Hopefully you learned a little bit about some of the different institutions that are involved and in what capacity. And if you haven't yet, please like, subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.